The market was loud, filled with shouts, smells of smoke, and the sound of chains dragging on stone. In the center of the square stood a huge wooden platform, known by all as the auction block. Here, creatures from many worlds were bought and sold like animals. Some were slaves, some were prisoners, and some were simply judged as worthless. Today, the biggest crowd had gathered for one reason: the alien giantess. She stood taller than all, her head nearly touching the roof of the market's high canopy. Her wrists were bound by thick iron cuffs, each chain glowing faint red, powered by alien technology. Her skin was pale silver, her hair black as night, falling like a curtain down her back. Her golden eyes, though fierce, carried no hope. The crowd roared with cruel laughter, pointing at her like she was no more than a beast. "Too big to breed," someone shouted. "She has no use, just cut her up for meat." Another voice laughed. The auctioneer, a fat alien with sharp tusks, raised his arms to silence the noise. His voice boomed through a strange speaker attached to his throat. "Behold, the giantess of the northern wastes, once a proud warrior, now reduced to nothing. She cannot give children, she cannot serve a clan, so her tribe marked her for slaughter. Tonight she will be yours for the right price." The crowd cheered. Some alien butchers rubbed their hands together, already imagining how much meat her body could provide. Wealthy nobles whispered about how rare her flesh was, how high it could sell on distant planets. No one spoke of her as if she were alive. No one saw her as a person. But the giantess heard every word. Each insult cut deeper than the chains. She once carried honor, once fought for her people. Now she was only meat. She kept her eyes low, refusing to let the crowd see her tears. In her chest burned a quiet fury, but her body was weak from days without food. The auctioneer slammed his staff on the ground. "Let the bidding begin, starting at 200 credits." Hands shot into the air. Voices rose one after another. 200, 300, 4. The crowd's hunger grew. The price was not for her life, but for her death, and then as the numbers climbed, a new voice spoke. It was calm, quiet, but carried across the square. 500. The crowd turned. Whispers spread fast. Standing at the edge of the platform was a man, small compared to the giantess, yet different from all others. A human. His clothing was simple, a travel cloak over his shoulders, dust covering his boots. His eyes were steady, not filled with hunger, not filled with cruelty, but something else, something the crowd could not name. The auctioneer's tusks twitched. "A human?" He barked a laugh. "What would you do with her? She could crush you with one hand." The crowd joined, in the laughter, pointing at the man, mocking him. But the human did not flinch. He raised his hand again, repeating his bid. 500 credits. 600, shouted a butcher. 700, cried a noble. The bidding war grew fierce, but each time the human's calm voice rose above it. 800, 900, 1,000. His tone never changed. His eyes never left the giantess. The giantess herself lifted her head for the first time. Her golden eyes locked with his. For a moment, the sounds of the market faded. She did not understand why was this fragile-looking creature fighting to buy her. Did he want her meat as well, or did he want something worse? At last, the hall fell silent. No one could match the human's final price. The auctioneer grumbled but slammed his staff down. "Sold! To the human!" Chains clanked as guards dragged the giantess down from the block. The crowd jeered, some disappointed, others mocking the human. He just wasted his fortune. The giantess will kill him before sunrise. Humans are mad. The guards shoved the giantess forward, and for the first time she stood close to her new master. Her towering frame cast a shadow over him. She glared down, expecting to see hunger in his eyes like all the others. But instead he looked up at her with calmness, even kindness. "You belong to him now," one guard spat, laughing. "Enjoy your final days, human. She'll snap your bones before you can touch her." The human did not answer the guard. He only reached out and placed a hand on the chain that bound her wrists. "Not anymore," he said softly. The giantess froze. Those words were strange. Not meat, not slave, not anymore. The marketplace laughed again, but in the middle of the noise, the giantess felt something she had not felt in years: confusion, hope, and fear all at once. Who was this human? Why did he see her differently? As the human led her away from the auction block, the crowd shouted insults and jokes behind them. But none of it mattered. For the first time since she was chained, the giantess wondered if her life was not over. And in the shadows of the market, someone else watched them leave. A figure cloaked in red, eyes sharp, whispering into a device. The giantess has been claimed by a human. This will not be allowed. The story had only begun. The market had returned to its noise, but under the laughter and the insults, the human walked steadily. The giantess followed, her chains still heavy on her wrists, her steps shaking the ground. Every eye followed them. Some were filled with mockery, some with anger, and some with simple curiosity. Nobody understood. Why would a fragile man waste so much money on something marked for slaughter? The human did not answer questions. He walked with quiet confidence, ignoring the stares. When they reached the gate of the market, 2 guards blocked his path. Their armor shone under the evening lights, and their sharp weapons pointed toward him. "You cannot take her out like this," one guard growled. "She is dangerous. She belongs in the pens until the butcher is ready." "She belongs to no one," the human replied calmly. He reached into his cloak and pulled out the papers of purchase marked with the seal of the auctioneer. "By your own law, she is mine now." The guards exchanged glances, uncertain. Finally, with a sneer, one of them stepped aside. "Then, she is your problem now, human. Don't expect sympathy when she rips you apart." The human did not answer. He motioned for the giantess to follow, and she did. Though her steps were slow, her face filled with confusion. Once they were away from the crowd, she finally spoke, her voice low and sharp. "Why?" The human looked up at her. "Why what?" "Why, buy me?" she asked, almost spitting the words. "Do you want to kill me yourself? To eat my flesh? Or do you think I will serve you?" Her golden eyes blazed, daring him to tell the truth. She expected cruelty. She expected hunger. But instead he stopped walking and studied her face carefully. "I bought you," he said slowly. "So no one else could." The words struck her harder than any chain. She froze, her breath caught in her chest. No one had ever spoken like that. Not her clan, not the buyers, not even the slaves. Everyone else saw her as a monster or as meat. But this man, he spoke as if she were more. "You lie," she muttered. He shrugged. "Then I am a liar. But you are still alive, aren't you?" She had no answer. Her chains rattled as she shifted uncomfortably. They continued walking until they reached a quiet corner of the city where the lights were dim and the noise of the market could not reach. The human stopped at a small stall run by an old alien woman selling bread and water. He paid for 2 loaves and a jug, then turned and handed 1 loaf to the giantess. She stared at it as if it were poison. "Food? For me?" "Of course," he said. "You haven't eaten in days." Her stomach betrayed her pride with a loud growl. Heat rose in her face as she snatched the bread and tore into it, each bite filling her with both shame and relief. She ate with tears on her cheeks, not caring who saw. The human only sat nearby, drinking quietly as though sharing food with her was the most normal thing in the world. For the first time in years, she felt something strange, something like safety. But safety never lasted long. As night fell, shadows moved in the alleys. Men followed them, not men of law, but hunters. The red-cloaked figure who had watched at the auction whispered to his companions, "The human cannot keep her. She belongs to the clan. We will take her back tonight." The giantess did not yet notice, but the human did. His eyes scanned the rooftops, the corners of the street. He finished his drink and stood. "We cannot stay here," he said. "Why?" she asked, still holding her bread. "Because trouble follows you," he replied, his voice calm but certain. She stiffened. Then leave me. I will face them. He shook his head. No, I made my choice. The words made her chest tighten. She did not know why, but hearing him claim her as his choice felt heavier than chains. They left the city through a broken side gate, the human leading, the giantess close behind. The stars above the desert stretched wide, cold, and endless. She walked in silence, thinking about his words. Hours passed before she spoke again. Human. Yes? My clan said I was cursed, that my body was too large, too strong. They called me useless. Do you understand what that means? The human looked up at her, his expression unreadable. It means they were afraid of you. She blinked. Afraid? He nodded. Strength is never useless. It only scares those who cannot control it. The desert wind howled around them. For a moment she felt warmth in her chest that was not from food or fire, but from words she had never heard before. But the warmth quickly faded as the hunters moved closer in the dark. The red-cloaked figure lifted his weapon and whispered, "Tonight the human will die and the giantess will return to the slaughter." And so, as the stars burned above, the game of life and death had already begun. The human knew it. The giantess felt it, and the audience watching their journey would know. The real danger had only just started. The night stretched wide across the desert, quiet except for the crunch of footsteps on sand. The human walked ahead, carrying a small lantern that glowed faintly in the dark. Behind him, the giantess followed, her chains dragging with every heavy step. The iron cuffs dug into her wrists, the glowing red links biting at her skin. Each sound of metal scraping against stone reminded her of her fate. She was not free. She was still bound. She thought about running. The human was small, fragile compared to her size. If she pulled hard enough, she could rip the chain from his hand and disappear into the night. But something inside stopped her. Not fear. She had faced hunters and death before. It was something else. That strange calmness in his eyes, the way he gave her bread, the way he said she was his choice. Those things made her hesitate. They reached the ruins of an old outpost, half buried in sand. The walls were broken, but there was enough shelter from the wind. The human set the lantern down and pulled out a small tool from his cloak. He turned toward her. "Sit," he said simply. She narrowed her golden eyes. "Why?" "I'm taking off your chains," he answered. The giantess froze. The desert wind howled through the ruins. For a moment, she thought she had heard him wrong. "My chains." He nodded and walked closer. His calm voice carried no fear. "You cannot keep walking like this. They will kill your spirit before the hunters even arrive." Her throat tightened. For years, chains had defined her. They were marks of shame, reminders that she was nothing but property. No one had ever spoken of removing them, not even in kindness. The thought itself seemed impossible. "You are a fool," she whispered. "If you free me, I will crush you." "Then crush me," he said, kneeling at her side. "But not while you are still chained." Her chest trembled. For the first time, she had no reply. He placed the small device against the glowing links. Sparks hissed. With a soft crack, the first shackle opened. The red glow died away. The chain fell to the sand with a dull thud. The giantess stared at her wrist rubbing the raw skin, unable to believe it. He moved to the other cuff. "Hold still." "Why?" Her voice was sharp again, trying to hide her shaking heart. "Because you deserve better than chains," he said. The words broke something inside her. No one had ever told her she deserved anything. She had been told she was cursed, worthless, fit only for slaughter. Yet this human, this stranger, spoke as if she were more. With another spark, the second cuff opened and clattered to the ground. For the first time in years, her arms were free. She flexed her hands slowly, feeling the air touch skin that had been hidden beneath iron. She was trembling, not from weakness but from a storm inside her chest. The human sat back, watching her carefully. His hand rested near his belt, not on a weapon, but ready in case she struck him. "There," he said, softly. "No more chains." The giantess stood. She towered above him, her shadow stretching across the ruined walls. Every instinct in her screamed that this was the moment. She could kill him. She could take his water, his lantern, his cloak, and vanish into the desert. He had given her the chance. She clenched her fists. The desert waited. The human did not move. His eyes did not waver, and then instead of striking, she fell to her knees. The ground shook under her weight. Her golden eyes burned with tears she could not stop. "Why?" she asked again, her voice breaking. "Why do this for me?" The human looked at her for a long time, then spoke simply. "Because I see you. Not what they called you, not meat, not a curse. You." The giantess bowed her head, unable to look at him. The chains at her feet glimmered faintly under the lantern light, now nothing but broken metal. She felt both weaker and stronger than ever before, but peace did not last. From the dunes came the sound of footsteps, many footsteps. The hunters had followed them. Shadows moved in the lantern glow, figures with weapons raised, eyes hungry for blood. At their front stood the red-cloaked figure, his voice sharp like a blade. "You think you can free her, human?" he sneered. "She belongs to the clan, she belongs to death." The giantess rose, her chest still heaving from tears, but now her eyes burned with something new. Anger. Freedom. For the first time she had no chains, no master. She stood tall, towering above the hunters, her fists clenched, her heart roaring. Inside her chest, the human stepped beside her, his hand resting on a blade at his side. He did not back away. The red-cloaked figure raised his weapon. "Then you both will die tonight." The desert wind screamed louder, carrying the promise of battle. The giantess looked down at the human, then back at the hunters. She realized her choice had already been made. For the first time in her life, she was free, and she would not let anyone take that away. The night sky burned with starlight as the hunters closed in, their boots sinking into the sand. The red-cloaked leader lifted his spear, its tip glowing with deadly energy. Behind him, the hunters spread out, circling like wolves around prey. But the giantess was no longer prey. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The broken chains still lay at her feet, useless now. She stepped forward, her giant shadow stretching over the ruins, and roared. The sound shook the sand, echoing across the desert. The hunters hesitated. For the first time they faced her unbound. The human stood calmly at her side, his hand gripping the hilt of his blade. He looked small compared to her towering frame, yet he showed no fear. "Stay close," he whispered. The hunters lunged. The first came with a curved blade, aiming for the human. Before he could strike, the giantess swung her arm like a falling tree. Her fist crashed into his chest, sending him flying into the sand. Another leapt onto her back, trying to drive a knife into her neck. She twisted, grabbed him by the leg, and slammed him into the ground. The human moved too, fast and sharp. His blade flashed in the lantern light, striking one attacker's weapon aside and cutting his shoulder. He fought with precision, every movement controlled. But he was only one man, and the hunters were many. The red-cloaked leader grinned, his spear aimed at the human. "You cannot protect her, little man," he shouted. He thrust forward, but the giantess stepped between them. The spear struck. Her arm, burning her skin, but she did not fall. Instead, she grabbed the shaft, snapped it in half, and hurled the leader backward. Her golden eyes blazed with fury. The hunters, seeing their leader stumble, wavered. The desert was silent for a moment, broken only by their ragged breaths. Then, one by one, they turned and fled into the night. The red cloak disappeared with them, his voice echoing. "This is not over. The clan will not forgive this." The giantess stood tall, her chest heaving, blood dripping from the burn on her arm. She looked down at the human. He was breathing, hard sweat on his face, but he was smiling. "You fight well," he said. She blinked, surprised. I nearly crushed you. He shook his head. You saved me. Those words pierced her heart deeper than any blade. She turned her face away, hiding the strange heat in her chest. When the battle ended, silence returned to the desert. The lantern still glowed faintly, but its flame was dying. The human packed his blade and supplies. We must move, he said. They will return with more. She followed without question. The journey began. The desert stretched endless. Days turned into nights and nights into days. The sun beat down harshly. The sand burned like fire beneath their feet. The human carried little water and often gave most of it to her, though she protested. You are small, she told him once. You need it more. He only smiled. And you are strong. You will carry us both if I fall. She stared at him, confused, but said no more. At night they rested under broken cliffs or inside shallow caves. The human would build a small fire, and she would sit nearby, her arms wrapped around her knees, her golden eyes reflecting the flames. She had lived years in chains, but never like this, never with quiet, never with someone who did not treat her as a beast. One night, as the wind howled outside their shelter, she finally asked, Why do you not fear me? The human poked the fire with a stick. Should I? Yes, she replied bitterly. I am cursed. My people cast me out. They said I was too large, too strong. They marked me as useless. The human looked up at her. His voice was calm, steady. Strength is not useless. It is only feared by the weak. Her breath caught. His words echoed in her chest, fighting against years of shame. For a moment she wanted to believe him. For a moment she wanted to see herself through his eyes. But the memory of her clan's laughter still burned inside her. As the days passed, danger followed them. Strange beasts lurked in the desert, scaled creatures with jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole. Bandits prowled the trade routes, hunting for easy prey. Each time the human fought with skill, but it was her size and strength that saved them. She tore beasts apart with her hands, broke bandits' weapons with single strikes. After every battle, the human would look at her the same way, not with fear, but with respect. You are not a curse, he told her once, after she crushed a beast's skull. You are a shield. Her chest ached at his words. No one had ever said such things to her. But peace was fragile. One evening, as the sun sank behind the dunes, smoke rose in the distance. The human narrowed his eyes. A village, he said. We need supplies. The giantess followed him, but unease filled her. Villages meant people, and people meant stares, whispers, fear. She was too large, too different. They would see her as a monster. She was right. When they entered the village, children screamed and ran. Adults froze, their eyes wide with terror. Whispers spread like fire. A beast, a giant. She will kill us. The giantess lowered her head, shame burning inside her. But the human stepped forward, his voice strong. She is with me. She will harm no one. The villagers did not believe. Some picked up stones, some raised weapons. The air filled with fear and hate. The giantess clenched her fists. Part of her wanted to run, to return to the empty desert. But another part remembered his words. You are a shield. So she stayed. And for the first time, she wondered if her journey was not only survival, but the beginning of something greater. The village firelight flickered against mud walls as night fell. The human and the giantess sat apart from the crowd, though the crowd never truly left them alone. Eyes followed every move she made. Whispers grew sharper, and fear clung to the air, like smoke. Children peeked from behind doorways, pointing at her massive frame, while adults muttered warnings. Keep her away. She will bring ruin. The human ignored them. He shared bread with the giantess beneath an old wooden roof offered by one nervous villager. But the giantess ate in silence, her golden eyes lowered. She could feel the weight of their hate. It was not new. It was the same judgment she had lived with her entire life. And yet, now that she walked without chains, the pain cut deeper. When the bread was gone, the human asked softly, "Does it always happen like this?" The giantess looked at him, her jaw tight. "Always. Wherever I go, it is the same. Fear. Disgust, hatred. They see my size, my strength, and nothing else." The human studied her face, waiting. She clenched her fists. "But that is not the worst part. Do you know why they truly cast me out?" He shook his head. Her voice trembled, heavy with shame. "Because I cannot give children. My body is too large, too different. The healers said I was cursed. The elders said I had no value. A woman who cannot bear life is nothing to them. So they named me unworthy, too big to breed, marked for slaughter." The words hung in the air like knives. The human's expression did not change, but his eyes burned with quiet anger. Not at her, but at the cruelty of her people. She laughed bitterly, though no joy was in it. "Do you see now? That is the truth of me. I am not only hated, I am useless. Even my clan had no place for me." The human leaned forward. His voice was calm, yet every word struck with force. "That is not truth. That is a lie they made you believe." Her head snapped up, her golden eyes wide. "A lie?" "Yes," he said firmly. "They measured your worth by what they wanted from you, not by who you are. They feared your strength. They twisted it into shame. But strength is not a curse. It is survival. It is hope. And you are not useless." Her throat tightened. She turned her face away, but tears still welled in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever told her she was more than her curse. She wanted to believe him, but years of cruelty weighed against his words. Before she could reply, a stone struck the wall beside her head. Villagers shouted from the street, "Monster, leave our village. She will bring the hunters here. Get out before dawn." The giantess rose to her feet, fury boiling in her chest. Her massive form filled the doorway, her shadow stretching across the square. Children screamed. Men raised weapons. The human stood quickly, placing a hand against her arm. "Wait. They call me monster," she roared, her voice shaking. "The houses. Should I prove them right?" The human met her burning gaze. His voice was steady, but his grip was strong. "No. You do not prove them right. You prove them wrong." The giantess froze. The fire in her chest twisted into something else. Pain, sorrow, longing. Slowly she stepped back, lowering her head. She had strength enough to crush the village, yet she obeyed his quiet words. The villagers, shocked by her restraint, fell silent. But their fear did not fade. By morning they were forced to leave. They walked into the desert again, the village lights shrinking behind them. For a long time, neither spoke. The giantess carried the weight of her confession like a stone. Finally, the human broke the silence. "You are not worthless," he said. "Children or no children, you are alive. And you saved me more than once. That is worth more than anything they could demand." She glanced down at him, her throat tight. "Why do you care?" He gave a small smile. "Because I see you, not what they call you." Her chest ached. She turned her face away, afraid he might see the tears gathering again. But the desert gave no time for peace. That night, as they rested near a cliff, torches appeared in the distance. The hunters had returned, more of them, stronger, led once again by the red-cloaked figure. His voice carried across the sands. "You cannot run forever, giantess. Your curse belongs to us. The clan will have your flesh." The giantess rose, her fists tightening. But this time she was not chained. She was not silent. She stood tall and shouted back, her voice echoing across the night. "I am not your curse. I am not your meat. I am free." The hunters laughed, their weapons raised. The human drew his blade, stepping to her side. The red-cloaked figure sneered. "Then both of you will die." The desert wind roared, carrying the promise of battle once more. The giantess looked down at the human, and for the first time she did not feel alone. Her secret was no longer hidden. Her shame had become her strength. And tonight, she would fight not just to survive, but to live. The desert wind howled like a living beast as torches flared in the distance. The hunters had returned, more of them this time, stronger, faster, and filled with cruel determination. The red-cloaked leader walked at the front, his voice sharp as steel. "You cannot escape, Giantess. You belong to the clan. You belong to death." His words echoed through the night, bouncing against the cliffs. Behind him, dozens of hunters marched with spears, chains, and nets glowing with alien energy. They looked like a tide of shadows coming to swallow everything in their path. The giantess stood tall on the cliff's edge, her golden eyes burning like fire. No chains held her now. No guards forced her forward. For the first time she faced them as herself, free, unbroken, furious. The human stepped beside her, his blade drawn. He looked impossibly small against her towering form, yet his voice carried steady and clear. "They come for you, but they'll have to go through both of us." She turned her head slightly, staring down at him. For a moment, her chest tightened. He was only one man. Fragile, weak compared to her. Yet he stood without fear. She clenched her fists. "Then we fight together." The hunters surged forward. The first wave climbed the rocks, spears raised. The giantess roared, her voice shaking. "The night." She grabbed one by the chest and hurled him off the cliff. Another lunged at her leg, chain glowing as it wrapped around her ankle. She slammed her foot down, crushing stone and snapping the chain like straw. The ground shook beneath her rage. Beside her, the human fought with speed and precision. A blade flashed in the torchlight, slicing through nets before they could trap her, cutting down hunters who tried to flank them. He moved with purpose, every strike saving her from harm. But the hunters kept coming. The red-cloaked leader climbed slowly, his broken spear replaced with a cruel whip of fire. His voice cut through the chaos. "You cannot fight forever, Giantess. Even the strongest fall. And when you do, your body will feed the clan." Her golden eyes locked on him. Her heart pounded. He was the one who watched her at the auction, the one who followed her across the desert. He was the symbol of everything that had marked her as worthless. "I will never belong to you," she growled. He cracked the whip, flames slicing the air. It lashed across her arm, leaving a burning scar. She staggered but did not fall. Instead, she lunged, grabbing the whip, pulling him closer. Their eyes met for the first time, predator against predator. The human leapt forward, striking at the hunters who tried to protect their leader. He fought like a storm, but his size betrayed him. A blade caught his side. He stumbled, blood staining his cloak. "Human," the giantess cried, her voice filled with fear. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand. "Don't stop. Fight." Those words lit a fire inside her chest. Fury exploded through her veins. She swung her arm, hurling the red-cloaked leader into the sand below. She crushed hunters with her fists, broke their weapons, shattered their chains. Every strike carried her rage, her pain, her years of humiliation. Tonight, she would not be their meat. Tonight, she would be their nightmare. The battle raged until the hunters' courage broke. One by one, they fled into the darkness, leaving only their leader crawling across the sand. His red cloak was torn, his weapon broken. He spat blood and glared up at her. "This is not the end," he hissed. "The clan will hunt you until you are nothing. You cannot escape your fate." The giantess loomed over him, her massive shadow covering his broken form. For a moment, she wanted to end it, to crush him and silence his voice forever. But then, she remembered the human's words. "You do not prove them right, you prove them wrong." Her fists trembled. Slowly, she turned away. "My fate is mine now." The leader's rage burned in the sand as he dragged himself into the night. The desert grew silent again. The torches were gone. Only the broken weapons remained, scattered like bones. The giantess turned back to the human. He was leaning against the cliff, blood dripping from his side. His face was pale, but he was smiling faintly. You saved me, he whispered. Her knees buckled as she knelt beside him, her massive hands trembling as they hovered near his wound. You are hurt because of me. I chose this, he said softly. I chose you. Her chest ached. Tears blurred her golden eyes. She lifted him carefully in her arms, cradling him as though he were made of glass. For the first time, she felt fear, not for herself, but for him. Stay awake, she begged. Stay alive. His hand touched hers weakly. I will, because you are carrying me. The desert wind quieted, as though listening. She stood, holding him against her chest. Her steps steady. She was no longer chained, no longer marked for slaughter. But now she carried something far heavier than chains. She carried him. And for the first time in her life, she wanted to protect someone more than herself. The desert stretched endlessly, glowing silver under the moonlight. The giantess walked. With steady steps, her long strides carrying both herself and the human in her arms. His weight was small against her chest, but his life felt heavier than any burden she had ever carried. Every heartbeat of his was precious, and she listened closely, as if her own strength could keep it steady. The battle was behind them. The hunters were gone. For now. But the red-cloaked leader's words still echoed in her mind. The clan will hunt you until you are nothing. She tightened her grip around the human. Not while she lived. Not while she breathed. The human stirred weakly, his eyes half closed. You are trembling, he whispered. She looked down, her golden eyes soft. I am not trembling. You are, he said with a faint smile. But it suits you. It means you care. Her chest tightened. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. I do not understand you, human. You are weak, small. Yet you stand for me. You bleed for me. And you fight for me, he replied softly. That is enough. She lowered her head, her black hair falling like a curtain around them. For years, she had been called worthless. For years, she had been chained, mocked, and sold as meat. Yet here, in the arms of silence and starlight, she realized something she had never dared believe. She mattered. At dawn, they reached the edge of a valley where water flowed between rocks. Birds sang, and green plants grew, a place untouched by hunters. She laid the human down gently near the stream. He winced as he moved, but he was alive. She washed his wound carefully, her massive fingers trembling as if afraid to hurt him further. He watched her quietly. You are gentle, he said. She scoffed, her voice thick. I am not gentle, I am a beast. No, he said firmly. You are more human than most I have known. The words broke her defenses. She sat beside him, her face hidden in her hands, tears sliding down her cheeks. Why do you see me this way? Why do you not call me what I am? Because you are not what they call you, he answered. You are not too big. You are not useless. You are not meat. You are you. And that is enough. She sobbed silently, her shoulders shaking. For the first time, her tears were not only for pain, but for release. She let them fall, because beside him, she did not have to hide. Days passed. In the valley, the human's wound healed slowly under her care. She hunted for him, brought him food, carried water, and built shelter with her massive hands. Each night they sat by the fire, speaking quietly, learning each other's worlds. He told her about Earth, about oceans and mountains, about skies filled with birds instead of hunters. She listened, her golden eyes wide, imagining a world where no one judged her body, no one called her cursed. She told him about her clan, about the endless battles to prove worth, about the cruelty that measured life only by bloodlines. Her voice broke often, but he listened with patience. Each time he reminded her, that was their world, it does not have to be yours. And slowly, she began to believe him. But peace was fragile. One evening, Smoke rose again in the distance. She tensed, her fists tightening. They are coming. The human looked at her with calm eyes. Then we move. Together. She stared at him. You would keep walking with me? Even if the whole clan hunts us? He smiled faintly. Especially. Then her heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to tell him what burned inside her chest, but the words tangled. Instead, she knelt before him, her massive frame bowing low. Then I will protect you until my last breath. He touched her hand gently, his small fingers pressing against her skin. And I will walk with you until mine. They left the valley before dawn, climbing the rocky path that led toward unknown lands. The rising sun painted the sky with fire and gold, casting their shadows long against the earth. For the first time, the giantess walked not as a slave, not as cursed flesh, not as meat, but as a woman beside a man who chose her. Her steps were heavy, but her heart felt light. She looked down at him, his cloak wrapped tight, his stride slower but steady. What do you see when you look at me? She asked softly. He met her gaze without hesitation. I see someone worth saving. Her throat tightened, but she smiled through her tears. The desert wind carried her laughter, strange, broken, but real. And so, their journey began again. Not toward chains, not toward slaughter, but toward a life neither of them had ever known. A life of freedom, a life of hope, a new beginning.